It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton back with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. Broadcasting live today, not from Atlanta, Georgia, where we typically are. We're in beautiful, gorgeous Scottsdale, Arizona. I wish y'all could see this image of fun and sun we've got out to my left. We're continuing our coverage of the Manufacturing Supplier Diversity Conference hosted by DMSCA. And DMSCA may be a new acronym for you. It stands for the Diverse Manufacturing Supply Chain Alliance. If you haven't, if this isn't on your radar, check out DMSCA.us. Great group. Before we get started, we want to, quick programming note, like all of our podcasts at Supply Chain Now, you can find our podcast wherever you get yours from. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. All right. One other, I told a story. We're going to have two quick programming notes. Big thanks to our sponsor, Verison, who is leading a charge for a successful data harmonization globally, one company at a time. You can learn more at verison.com. All right, so I'm really pleased to have Farida Ali, President and CEO at the Dynamic Computer Corporation, as one of our early interviews here at the conference. Farida, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We were just talking desserts that we had at lunch. I tried all of them, I think. They were hard not to.
Yeah, they were good.
But if you've been, I'm not sure of your experience thus far at the conference, but the conversations we're having, the thought leadership we've seen via presentations and panels and whatnot, really, really have enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's been, very cutting edge and what's needed now, so it's been great. What
is needed now? That's a great way of putting it. So, Farida, I want to start with giving our audience an opportunity, kind of like what Paul and I had, the opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So tell us more about who you are, where you were born, and if you've got time for an anecdote or two from your upbringing, please do share.
Okay, sure. So I was born in India, actually. And my father came over in 1967 when my mom was expecting. So one interesting thing is I didn't meet my father until I was a year and a half old.
Okay.
And we were out in California. And my father was a financial analyst with Burroughs. He knew Fortran and COBOL languages. And he got transferred to the headquarters up in Detroit.
Okay.
And what he did in 1979 was sell our house and buy a little electronics store that
Big,
had just
bold bet.
Yes,
yeah.
That had just gotten its Apple dealership, and he said at that time everyone's going to have a computer on their desk.
Well, so from the West Coast to Detroit.
Yes.
What was that? So you had to deal with some cold weather for the first time, amongst other things.
I was only 3, okay. So I'm kind of a Midwesterner. I don't really think of myself as anything but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and what I understand, we're going to be in. I think, as I shared with you earlier, we're going to be in Michigan a couple times later this year. I've never been there, but I've heard so much about a lot of the Renaissance taking place in the greater Detroit area, which is outstanding to hear.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to learn more about your business. But before we talk about your company, tell us about what you did prior to your current role as president and CEO. Give us a little background there.
Sure. So it was never really my intention to be running a company. I call myself an accidental CEO.
Okay.
And I went to law school. Was never interested in the family business, but my personal circumstances changed. I became a mom, and the business all of a sudden seemed very attractive to me. And my dad said, sure, gave me an 80% pay cut, and we were off.
Off and running to the races.
Yes. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a computer science degree, but I'm running an IT company.
And some of companies' most successful leaders come because they bring that out-of-the-box perspective, from different journeys and walks of life. So I'm curious to see how, before we talk about the company, what it does, how do you view that? Coming from outside of manufacturing, that can be a leg up in many ways.
Well, it can, because I think you approach it more as problem solving than kind of talking about, the speeds and feeds and particulars of that expertise. You're more like, well, how can we apply this more than trying to get into the weeds of it.
Right. Love that. Okay, so let's talk more about tell us about what the Dynamic Computer Corporation does.
Sure. So we deliver IoT solutions for life sciences organizations and for smart factory. We've been doing IoT since the late 90s. We just didn't know it was IoT at the time, right? So building connected devices that eventually go to a network that is based on traditional kind of IT systems. So you think of a server, a workstation, a laptop, a tablet, a phone, but it's adapted to a different purpose. So it's not the one that you use on your desk to do your work. Maybe it's one that somebody uses to check a tissue sample in a cancer biopsy. So those are the kinds of things that we work on.
That is some very advanced technology. From when your dad founded the company, talk to us about how it's evolved a good bit.
Sure. So, in the beginning, IT was very, or the PC IT, the home computer was very retail-based, and we had retail shops around Detroit metro area. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, all those big box retailers came in. My dad realized he really couldn't keep the business going that way, so we switched to B2B. And we found great opportunity there in our local Southeast Michigan area. But in the late 90s, another big shift was the internet. We had Dell Direct, selling things direct to the consumer and to the business, and we had to adapt again. So we started working on our value proposition. We branched out nationally, and we serviced very large organizations that were looking for a niche supplier that would take their IT needs very seriously and be able to adapt to their specific requirements.
Very interesting. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, as president and CEO, one of my favorite questions to ask these leaders, because everyone makes assumptions. Where do you spend your time, number one, and 1B, what's your favorite activity to spend your time? Where do you love to spend your time?
Well, I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about the future of technology and where do we need to be positioned so that we're in business for another 40 years. And I also spend a lot of time talking to customers and potential customers. And I think that's what I love the most, because it's just really interesting and great to hear what they're doing and to be a part of their journey and get an opportunity to work with some of these great businesses.
It is invigorating.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so if we were to broaden back out, right, and kind of think of the global end-to-end supply chain community, right? What's one or two trends or developments or innovations that you may have been tracking here lately more than others?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we're even talking a lot about here today at DMSCA is this issue of supply chain vulnerability. And the technology supply chain has more of that, I think, than people understand. One is you have things being manufactured in all different geographic locations, but we've also got this problem of counterfeit technology.
Absolutely.
Or embedded spyware and technology. So being able to authenticate, to control, to manage your supply chain, not only from our customers' perspective, but from our perspective is really important. And I think finding those control mechanisms is where a lot of innovation can happen.
Yeah, I think it strikes me that as fast as innovation's taking place and as much time and labor and blood, sweat, and tears, all that's saving, our efforts at protecting our technology have to almost evolve faster. And it can be such a, speaking of cybersecurity, it can be such a, the blind spots in people's. There was a great commercial that I believe Cisco put out. And basically what this case study that actually is based on a true story, but it was boiled down to like a 1-minute video. A manufacturing organization was targeted by hackers, and they were tracking their employees and where they spent their time. They happened to stumble across a bowling league not too far from the factory, where a lot of employees were bowling in a league regularly, and of course that bowling league's computer system wasn't very secure, so they were able to hack that with relative ease, and then penetrated their email accounts at the manufacturing plant, shut it down. The plant lost lots and lots of time. Jobs when the production line shuts down, jobs and contracts, a lot of things are at risk, right. and all stemming from a Wednesday night bowling league. It is right. It is fascinating.
And I think the thing that we should all kind of just accept now is that we are going to have cybersecurity risk. You are going to be hacked, and it's important to put as much security around it as you can, but threats evolve continuously. So then you need to think about cyber resiliency. How quickly can you recover? How quickly can you isolate the breach and control it and minimize the impact? And so we're really working with our customers to think about resiliency after a hack happens.
So I want to ask you a question around leadership and some other things. But before I do, when you look at the trends out there and the development and landscape, anything else stick out before we?
Well, I'm really excited about the different endpoints that are yet to come out. So you hear things like electronic paper, where you're just going to be able to roll up something and create a sign, and you're going to have digital paper basically, or electronic dust, where you're going to be able to throw some dust on a table and be able to sense the surroundings and all the different sensor technology. So I think the data that we're going to be able to capture through digital systems it's kind of an exciting time.
Very exciting. All right, so shifting gears a bit, one of the regular pieces of feedback that we've heard, we're approaching, well, by the time this podcast is released, we probably have already released our 300th podcast. And it's been very fascinating. It's been such a rewarding journey to hear different stories, different perspectives. And one of the common threads, especially one of our series is called Full Access, dedicated to exceptional women in leadership roles, right? Regardless, kind of across industry. And regularly we've heard that one of the most important things we can do as business leaders is to spotlight women in leadership roles, so that our young ladies coming up through kind of can see and aspire to be the top level, the CEO's office. Could you speak to that? I mean, how does that resonate with you? Do you see that same need, and how do you act on that to help others see, hey, just like me, you can be president and CEO of a manufacturing company?
Sure. Well, first of all, congratulations on almost having 300 podcasts. That's a big accomplishment.
I have all my appendages still.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, many times as a woman CEO and a CEO in tech, you're the only person in the room. You're the only woman at the table in certain surroundings, and that can be hard, right? But I think what I'm really appreciating is that there is a change of perspective. I'm also, really heartened by what I see in young women and their continuous push to kind of even ignore the fact that there's a gender issue, and let's just keep being the best that we can be. So
absolutely. All right, so let's shift gears to DMSCA. I've been trying to wrap my head around a new acronym, and it's finally, I think, starting to stick. So, Diverse Manufacturing Supply Chain Alliance, DMSCA. What brings you here? I think you've been coming to these conferences for a while.
No, actually, this is my first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, my homework's wrong. Sorry about that. So how did this hit your radar then, and why are you here?
So, we were fortunate enough to meet with a representative of Abbott, and we had a great conversation, and they mentioned the DMSCA event to us. They agreed to kind of sponsor us as an invitee, and we were able to come. And I didn't know something like this existed. We've been part of other diverse advocacy organizations, but what they do here in terms of bringing a small group of, I would call them second stage organizations together to meet with large corporations, it's just a very unique environment.
Outstanding. So let's make sure that our listeners can connect with your organization to learn more, or with you. How can folks learn more about your company?
Sure. So our website is www.dccit.com, and we have a blog. We also have a LinkedIn page that you can find us on, and we're on Twitter as well.
Outstanding. You got all the bases covered.
Yeah. Well, we are a technology company.
Right.
We should be a little up to date.
Oh, man. So we've been chatting with Farida Ali, President and CEO, Dynamic Computer Corporation. Really appreciate your time today, and admire what you do, and hopefully we can a year from now we'll sit back down and see what's changed as y'all continue to grow and evolve and serve a pretty high-tech sector.
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Be great. Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate
it.
Yep.
Appreciate it. All right, so appreciate Farida's time. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. A couple quick notes here on the back end. First off, stay tuned for more programming and coverage here in Scottsdale with DMSCA's conference. And, again, you can learn more about the organization at dmsca.us. And then, secondly, be sure to check out other of our program. We've got a bunch of in-person and virtual events with partners around the world, from EFT Reuters events to the Automotive Industry Action Group, Resilience 360, and much more. You can find all that at supplychainnowradio.com. And if you can't find it, shoot our CMO a note, Amanda, at supplychainnowradio.com. Thanks again to our guests, our sponsor, Veriston.com. Stay tuned as we continue our coverage. And on behalf of the entire team here, Scott Luton, wishing you a wonderful week ahead. And we'll see you next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.